Hello and welcome inside another edition of IndyStar Preps Weekly. My name is Brian Haenchen, joined by Neddenriep and the Akeem Glaspie. Akeem, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Brian?
Oh, I'm just great. Kyle, how are you?
Good. Glad to be out. This is an awesome stadium. I've seen it from the outside, but being on the field, it's amazing.
I suppose I should unbury the lead here and say that we're at Noblesville High School. The Millers have their playoff game this weekend, but more importantly, the soccer team sent both teams to the state championship game. The girls rolled with 4 goals from an assist from Meredith Tiffany. The boys won a dramatic game in their semi-state game. So you got 2 Millers in the state championship game on Saturday, Akeem. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely good. Shout out Noblesville.
That's got to be pretty rare to have 2. The school has both teams playing in the state finals. So that's amazing.
And what's funny is that last year, everybody is kind of had the feeling and I think it's fair to say, assumed that it was going to be the same thing. It would be Noblesville girls because they were just on a tear, and then they got upset by Homestead, and the boys were shutting out and blowing out everybody that they faced in the playoffs once they got out of sectional. So it's funny that this is the year where the boys seem like maybe they'd be down after graduating so much. They're back in the state championship game, and the girls are back to doing what they do. So 2 really impressive teams, 2 really fun teams, and we'll get to it at the end of the show, obviously. But we'll have lots of soccer coverage coming up here over the next however many days are left by the time you're watching this. It's pretty exciting. But we're here to talk about football primarily. You both had games last week. Kyle, you're the picks leader right now, so we'll start with you in your game. Who did you have?
Thank you. New Pal and Mount Vernon. It was a totally different game than the first time they met. It was 42-6 New Pal. But, the playoffs is just different beast. And Mount Vernon came to play. They got behind early in that game, actually, but they have 6A speed on that team with Eli Breidenthal, George Buren, and really Luke Ertl, as a freshman quarterback, played really well. I mean, for a freshman, for any grade, really. But so they took the lead 24-21. First time all season New Pal had been behind in a game, which is an amazing stat, considering we're into the playoffs now. So so it was kind of a gut check time. But really, Blaine Nunnally, all areas of the game. He had 2 touchdown catches. He had 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter that kind of turned the game. And, on special teams, he made I kind of joked with him. I thought the most impressive play he made, he saved a punt from going in the end zone. Kind of a diving, one of those lunges where you kind of dive for the ball, throw it back in. And he said that's his least favorite thing to do of anything he does, which makes sense. But it was really in Mount Vernon. I thought, in the aftermath of it, they're the defending state champs. I think you covered their game, Brian, last year in the state finals. They're so fast, and they lost a lot from that team. But even still, I thought it was an impressive win. 2 kind of different. New Pal has really good athletes too, but they got that line that they like to run the ball and run Grayson Thomas, and then Danny Tippett threw really well to mostly to Nunnally, but also to Thacker too. But it's one of those, you always have a game where it's kind of not going your direction for a team that maybe goes on to have a chance to win state, and it was kind of that type of game for New Pal. So a good gut check win for the Dragons, and they move on now and play a Greenfield Central team that's also pretty good, but a different style. They like to run the ball, did not spread it out quite as much. So that'll be an interesting game. But yeah, life moves on for New Pal now. If they can beat Greenfield, it's looking pretty good. They could see Roncalli in that game we've been talking about all year.
Akeem, you've had a chance to cover New Pal a few times this year. As you're following along on Twitter, I'm curious to hear your reaction and your thoughts on the way that New Pal had to come back and win that game.
Yeah, obviously for them to never have trailed and then to trail for the first time in the playoffs is kind of shocking. But, I guess it was never in doubt in my mind, just because I know the talent that New Pal has, and kind of just, again, at all 3 levels on both sides of the ball. We've talked about it several times. And I guess they're kind of, with Tippett at quarterback now, they're kind of built a little bit better to come back, because when you do have the passing attack with Tippett and Nunnally, no lead is really safe against them, and with the running attack with Grayson Thomas. So, yeah, it's kind of shocking that it got off to that kind of a start, and I had a similar game with my game, just with the way that Mooresville started. But, yeah, I guess it's not about how you start, it's how you finish.
That was a beautiful segue, Akeem. Let's talk about your game in Mooresville.
I'm doing your job for you,
I
Brian.
appreciate it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Proceed.
But, it was my first time to see Nick Patterson in person, and it was kind of funny because the start that he had could not have been worse. His first pass of the game was intercepted for a touchdown, a pick 6. Talking to Coach afterward, I guess there was miscommunication. Like Nick was running one play and the receiver was running a different play, but it was a pick six. So then Mooresville gets down right away, and then at their next possession they lose via fumble. So then it's like, oh wow, like this is going to be a game. Mooresville comes back and wins the second quarter. I believe they had 3 touchdowns. Kind of the highlight of the game was a pass that Nick Patterson dropped into Hogan Denny that was just, he couldn't have placed it any better. Dropped it right over the shoulder, and Denny grabs it out of the air with one hand, pins it to himself as he's going down. And obviously Denny's a baseball player, so that was kind of a, he said he's like a center fielder. Sometimes you just got to go get the ball, and that was just kind of that kind of cemented the game for them. Mooresville kind of handled it from then on out, but that start was just kind of shocking in a little bit. But the way that Mooresville kind of handled it and kind of responded, talking to Nick Patterson after the game, he said, we leaned on the Martinsville game where they had to go to overtime to win that game, and they were also down by 2 scores. So they've been in that situation before, and they did that without Hogan Denny. So Denny was kind of similar to Nunnally, kind of had a big impact on the game. 9 catches for 99 yards in that score. He would have had a rushing touchdown that was negated by a penalty, and he had an interception in the fourth quarter as well. So for someone who, and talking to him after the game, he was battling a knee injury. He wouldn't say he's at 100%, but he sure looked pretty dang good with the way that he kind of impacted the game on both sides of the ball. So, with Patterson and Denny, they seem to be a different team, but I'm interested to see what they can do next week. And if I was Mooresville, I would just run Patterson every game, every play. Because by watching him play, he's clearly the best athlete on the field. Uh-huh. His arm strength is apparent, but the accuracy is kind of lacking sometimes. So, QB sweeps, QB powers, it seemed like that'd be a great way to just get it done. So I'm interested to see if maybe they go to more of a rushing-based attack, because it seems like if you need a yard, you can't really stop Nick Patterson. So it's interesting to see.
Mooresville on now to play BREBEUF. That should be a fun game. We'll talk about that more as we get to the picks. One big upset that I want to talk to you before we get to those picks. Danville upsets Tri-West and knocks the Bruins out of the playoffs. Your boys' thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, 6 turnovers, by Tri-West. That'll kill you, obviously. So, it's a rivalry. We talked about last week. Those teams play each other every year, a lot of times twice a year. So, and it was a close game last time they played. But honestly, as we talked last week, they were kind of trending 2 different directions. And I really thought, Tri-West was going to get them, and maybe, a little bit bigger margin than last time they played. And I was out at Western Boone last week for a story that's coming this week. But, and they didn't say this, but I think they felt like, all right, Tri-West is probably going to be our opponent just based on what we'd seen. So that sets up a little different for this week. Obviously, Western Boone and Danville, and you can't sleep on Danville at this point. If they have the athletes, they have the type of players who can beat you, and we'll talk about that game. But yeah, that was maybe the biggest surprise. Like, wow, Danville's really handing it to Tri-West. Then finding out the turnover situation, it makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah, no, 6 turnovers, you can't overcome that. So I don't know if that's nerves or if that's just Danville coming out and really pushing the tempo and forcing the issue. But, yeah, so when you hear the 6 turnovers, it's kind of not as shocking. But, yes, that was definitely we both picked that wrong. That was the only game that we got wrong last week. So,
yeah, good segue.
Yeah, so.
Look at this guy. He's on fire, huh?
Yeah, I know.
He knows I'm losing my voice, and he's stepping up and taking the ball.
He's just taking all 3 rolls over.
He's all grown up, and he's all grown up. We love to see it. Picks last week, the boys, they each got one wrong. They picked all the same games because they're boring and uncontroversial. Class playing to protect the lead, which is embarrassing for him. But he does have a 2-game lead, we believe.
I thought it was 1 game.
It's a 1-game lead, we are told.
No.
Kyle and I were debating it last night, but our math was wrong. Kyle's up by a game. Will there be a change this week? Let's find out. Let's start off with Brownsburg, 8-1, traveling to Ben Davis, 6-3. Kyle, why don't you have honors?
Yeah, to me, this is the most intriguing game of all of them, just because there's some, unknown with the Jaden Whitaker injury. Even if he plays, like how well is he going to play, or how mobile can he be? And also, and Akeem touched on it last week, but the Thomas Gajkowski situation, where he came from Brownsburg last year, but he didn't play the first game of the year because he was still getting his eligibility for the second week because of the transfer situation. So just a lot of intrigue, I think. These teams know each other well. Last year they played in the regional. Ben Davis had lost early in the year and then absolutely worked Brownsburg in the regional. It was 32-0 at one point, ended up being 32-14. So Brownsburg's got that stuck away in the back of their mind after what happened last year. Going to be played at the same place, and Brownsburg had lost last year, but then beat Ben Davis in week 1 this year. But again, Gatkowski didn't play. It was 21-16, and it felt like Brownsburg, as that game went along, they started to control that game. It ended up being a 5-point game, but it felt like Brownsburg could have played better and did throughout the course of the year. But man, this is going to be a really good matchup. I really like, even with Whitaker somewhat compromised or whatever the situation will be, I just like that running game that they have with Sherrill and Marcus, and they've really and Balance. They've really been able to control the game. Really good offensive line, and that's what you look for, I think, in these type of games. But also you got Ben Davis, which, they're not going to come out there with any fear. And Elijah Price and Gatkowski, and they're very explosive on offense. Marcus Reese, so there's any number of ways this game can go. And I'm going to take, just based on how they played all year, I'm going to take Brownsburg to win a big game at Ben Davis. And but I feel like 50-50. Like, I think I could flip a coin on this game and go either way. I think it's going to be really fun. Emotions high. I think it's going to be a great crowd, but I'll take Brownsburg to win a close one.
Akeem, will you differ?
Yes. This is maybe the first game that we differ, maybe the only game. But yeah, like I said, I was at the Brownsburg HSC game, and I just saw how different Brownsburg looked without Jaden Whitaker. And even if you have a compromised Jaden Whitaker, what he brings in the running game just opens up so much of the offense. So if he's mobile, if he's just simply a pocket passer, that is a huge disadvantage for Brownsburg and a huge advantage for Ben Davis. So without knowing exactly Whitaker's status, I'd like to change it if I could, but if I have to pick, yes, I know. If I have to pick right now, I'm going Ben Davis.
We're recording this on a Tuesday, by the way, so if you're seeing this in outdated information, that's the reason why.
Yes.
Well, you do wonder too about the mental, just the mental side of things, like how. Ben Davis, the last time they played in a big game, Ben Davis beat them, and they know that, that in that regional game last year, they were the better team, and a lot of those same kids are playing in this game. So that's kind of where I was like, man, I don't, not sure how to. And you throw Whitaker in there, but yeah, Brownsburg, I do like that offensive line a lot and the way they run the ball. Obviously, they've done this for a reason, and
but if they're one-dimensional,
right.
I don't think the running game can thrive if they're forced to only rely on the run. So that's
great. That's kind of where it's like, I don't, but I think it'll be I'll be very interested, maybe more than any game this year, to see what happens in that game.
Good stuff. Akeem, we got Westfield 6-3 at CARMEL 6-3. Another tight one.
Yeah, this is another one that's a complete, coin flip toss up. I think it comes down to the quarterbacks with Kazmierzak and Ballard. Like I said, I like a Russian quarterback, and Ballard seems to be kind of finding his legs as the season's going on and what he's bringing in the rushing attack. And they have playmakers at running back as well and at wide receiver. So I'm going Westfield.
Kyle?
Really? Okay. Well, we're going to differ on the second game already. But I agree. I think this is kind of a toss-up game. Kind of the X factor could be Dylan Thieneman from Westfield, who hasn't, he only has played, I think, in 3 games now, and kind of they've been a little limited with him coming back from injury. I wouldn't be surprised if they use him on both sides of the ball, and he's going to Purdue. He's a great athlete. These teams actually met at Ben Davis in the preseason scrimmage. I covered that, and all 3 teams were about even. So I was kind of like, man, all these, it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out, especially with Westfield and CARMEL possibly playing each other. Now they are playing each other. Could be the biggest crowd of the year. I think it's going to be a great crowd. Those 2 teams are rivals. These teams haven't met in the playoffs the last couple of years because CARMEL's been on the south side of the bracket, now coming back north. So should be a lot of fun Friday night. I'll take CARMEL, though, in a close game, but I agree. I think this one, again, one of those toss-up type games.
Did Akeem just even the gap against Kyle? We'll find out.
Or I could take the lead.
He's down by 2.
No,
so
I'm down by 1.
He needs to come back.
Clark he's motioning 1.
You're assuming that you got. Never mind.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I'll have to go back and watch the tape and see what we said last week.
I don't know where that was. I'm tired. Lawrence North 4-5. Kyle traveling, or they're playing Cathedral 7-1. Where's that game being played?
At Arlington. They're at Arlington. They played most of their games there this year. I'm gonna again. This is kind of I don't think it's 50-50, but Ellen's been one of those hard teams to read this year. Like, they can beat a lot of really good teams, and then they lose to teams that maybe you expect them to beat. But they have really good athletes, and I am intrigued by, can they run the ball with Richardson against that defense, control the clock, and then maybe hit some big plays through the air, and they have at times been able to do that. But Cathedral, for the some of the issues that they've had with running the ball and at times, stopping people. Man, they're just so good on offense with that passing game. And I've got to pick Cathedral to win and possibly set up a game with LC next week. But I think it could be intriguing.
Akeem?
Yeah, no, I agree. Cathedral's just there. Their passing attack is just a well-oiled machine there with, again, all the targets we've talked about, and Danny O'Neal, we've talked about how well he can spread out the ball and just spin it and just how well he's playing at quarterback. So when you have that kind of advantage and just a polished passer like Danny O'Neal, can't pick against him. So I'm going Cathedral.
All right, the boys agree on Cathedral. Mooresville 8-2, traveling to BREBEUF. Jesuit 6-3. Akeem.
Yeah, like I said, Mooresville, they're kind of. I think last week will be a wake-up call for them. I don't know what they expected. Or actually, talking to Nick Patterson after the game, he did say they kind of took Lebanon a little lightly, that, they didn't start the way they would have liked to. And so that was kind of a wake-up call. So I would imagine Mooresville, they're going to start fast. They're going to get rid of the mistakes early, kind of the fumbling and the interceptions. That's something you don't see from them very often. And again, with Hogan Denny, he's kind of a great playmaker there. And I'd expect to see a lot of Nick Patterson in the rushing game, too. So I'm going Mooresville. BREBEUF is a very talented team, and I like their offense as well, but I just think Mooresville has the will and kind of the determination to get it done.
Kyle?
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite again.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to take BREBEUF. This is kind of maybe an upset pick, maybe not. I don't know. But I look at what BREBEUF's done defensively this year. With Finn Walters and Conway Zhang, they're as good as, I don't know if they're as good, but Joe Strickland and Jaden Childers last year for BREBEUF were really good rushing the passer up until they played Gibson Southern, and Brady Allen made it really tough because he's so good in the state championship game. But again, that was 3A. They made the run in 3A last year. Now they're playing 4A, so a little bit different route for them to try to make it through this year. Again, I think this is a toss-up type game. The thing is, though, if you can pressure Patterson, that's going to make it a little bit tougher on him. But, yeah, if they do what Akeem says and just run Patterson, that would make it tough too. And they have athletes, and both these teams, I will say, like Nolan Buckman last week had his best game at receiver for BREBEUF. They've kind of been changing their offense with Maverick Geske playing quarterback, and they got the ball to Buckman more. He had his best game at receiver last year. So their offense hasn't been super explosive as last year, but their defense has still been really good. So this could be like a 17-14 type of a game or something a little bit more low-scoring.
I think that favors Mooresville if it is a low-scoring game.
I think you're wrong.
Wow, okay.
I'm just kidding. I think it would be really.
He's not kidding.
He's not.
I think it could be a really good game. I think it will be. When you look at the games this week, I think that's maybe the most intriguing as far as and we talked about 3 of them that I think are, but that one's just because we haven't seen this matchup. BREBEUF has been 3A and Mooresville in 4A, so it's one of those where you don't quite know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. Well, if Patterson runs 80 times at the end of the game, we know that Mooresville coaching staff watches the show and they heed the pick runner-up Curtly's advice. Yeah.
They've been running him a lot. That's the thing. They've kind of been. It's like, how much do you risk it? But now you do everything you can to win the game.
Were you gonna?
Oh no, I'm just saying, in the final touchdown, Mooresville's final touchdown of last game. I mean, it's just Patterson calling his own number from 10 yards away. Just I don't know what the play was, but he was going to get the ball in the end zone. So that kid when he has a will and determination. So I say take the training wheels off, run him 80 times if you need to, and make it a 17-14 game. And I think Mooresville can pull it out.
Well, and he's not going to want to see his career end either. And that's he's a great. I've loved covering Nick. He's a great kid to talk to, and wish the best for him too. But yeah, he's not going to want to let it be over with. So, but that goes, BREBEUF's got kids feeling the same way, I'm sure.
Clark, I need you to title this episode "Kick the Training Wheels Off," please. Thank you. Next game for us, 2-1-8 teams, Avon and Pike. I know Pike has played some good teams really close. Kyle, what do you make of this one?
Yeah, again, this is it's 2-1-8 teams. That one of them is going to be playing Brownsburg or Ben Davis next week for the championship.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so we talked about seeding and whatever, but this is how it fell out, and it's even though they're 1-8, maybe one of the more balanced and intriguing matchups. And again, I don't know. I'm going to give the edge to Avon because of Mason Reynolds and what he can do on offense. But Pike has also been somewhat interesting week to week. Like, they go out and score 42 on LN, but then they give up 63, where their defense has been good in other games. So, it's hard to read this game, really, but I'm going to take Avon to win a close one.
Akeem?
I agree with Kyle. I mean, Mason Reynolds coming into the season was someone we expect to maybe take a big leap as a passer. I know he kind of had a pedigree coming in, from the limited playing time from the season before. So I like Avon's offense and what they're able to do. So I'm going Avon.
Akeem, we got next. You have Plainfield coming in at 4-5. They have to go up to West Lafayette to play Harrison at 8-1.
Yeah, so Harrison, they beat Plainfield in week 2, and it seems like the teams are kind of trending in different directions. Harrison's on an 8-game winning streak, I believe, and Plainfield kind of has had an up and down season. So just from that, I have to go Harrison.
Kyle?
Yeah, and last time they played, Harrison ran for 315 yards in that game. So if you can do that, Plainfield beat Martinsville. They play a better schedule than Harrison does overall. So if you kind of go down, it's like, it looks. I think it's going to be a better game than the records indicate. But I think Harrison, with what they've done in the running game, will have the advantage there. So I'm going to take the Raiders.
Getting it back a little bit closer to home, Bishop Chatard 6-4, traveling to Hamilton Heights at 8-2. Kyle.
Yeah, if these teams actually met in the state championship game, I remember covering this 2012. Hamilton Heights lost to Chatard in the state final, so they're on different sides of the bracket, which is kind of weird. Now they're in the same sectional, so obviously the alignment is somewhat different now. But Chatard has been one of those teams that offensively, they've been tough all season long. This Hamilton Heights team has kind of been building up over the last few years with John Kirshner as coach there, and Bodie Derer, their quarterback, gives them an element in the passing game that's been a little bit different. Normally they've been a running team, but Chatard, I think, is the pick here. But I think that, again, this could be a closer, maybe if Hamilton Heights can, limit the passing game somewhat, maybe a little bit more low scoring of a game than what you would think. But I think Chatard's the team to beat here.
Akeem?
Yeah, no, I think Kyle, said it well. I have no. It's hard to make a prediction in this game, but I think Chatard can pull it out.
Danville traveling to Western Boone. Akeem. Danville comes in 4-6. Western Boone 9-1.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question here is, can Danville replicate what they did last week? I mean, I don't know any team that can lay its head on getting 6 turnovers, but maybe they found something that allows them to generate those turnovers. Fumbles can be a little bit of luck depending on the way the ball bounces, but I think Danville, they're obviously playing with house money. I would imagine they have a lot of confidence heading into this game. I say all that to say I'm picking Weibo.
I love this. Classic Akeem. Kyle, who do you got?
I agree with Akeem, although, when we talked about Danville earlier, Darren Sharp had 45 carries last week against Tri-West, 186 yards. And the last time they played, even though they lost, it was 33-7 to Western Boone. He had 102 rushing yards. So, that will be a key, I think, if they can control the ball, because that's what Western Boone likes to do with Weekly. And he does that well. That's kind of their strength. So I think it could be a short game. Both teams are going to want to run the ball. Maybe that's a game to go cover because it's going to get over quickly. But I like Western Boone. I think they're I think this is a team that has kind of been getting better all season long, and I think they're very confident right now. And Weekly's been obviously putting up numbers every week. But you got Danville riding an emotional high too. You kind of wonder, can you beat your rival teams back to back? And the conference teams that you see, can they avenge another loss? So I'll be curious to why this will be one of the games I'll be tracking Friday night for sure.
Next game, Kyle, 6-4 teams. CASCADE is traveling to Sullivan. 2 questions. First, your pick. Second of all, where's Sullivan?
Sullivan's down kind of southwest of here, and they have a good program. That is over the last few years been getting better and better. One kind of unfortunate. I was texting with Connor Simmons, the Cascade coach, this morning actually, and Liam Farmer broke his fibula. He's out for the season for Cascade. So obviously a huge loss. And feel terrible for him. He's had a great, almost 2,000 rushing yards and leads them in tackles. He's kind of, when you talk about Cascade football, he's been the face for the last few years, and they've been getting better and better. So really bad news for them. He did that in last week's game against Greencastle. So he's not playing. So that to give Akeem a heads up on that, I'm going to take Sullivan. I do think Cascade, though, and he's going to be there trying to help on the sideline and do what he can to help them. And they do have some good players on that team. I think they're going to keep this game close, but Sullivan's got a lot of experience, and even if Farmer was playing, it would have been a hard game to go down there and win. Rowdy Adams, one of the better names in high school football.
Name.
He is a Sullivan quarterback, and he's been the starter for 3 years, so I'm going to take Sullivan.
Does Rowdy rock a mullet?
I don't know about that.
Rowdy,
I've only seen him with the helmet
If
on.
he doesn't rack a mullet, I'm going to be kind of disappointed, Rowdy. So get on that, buddy. Akeem, who do you got in that game?
Yeah, like Kyle was saying, I mean, Liam Farmer, 1,900 yards, 28 touchdowns. That's a lot of production to have to replace on the fly in the postseason. So, yeah, with that being said, I'll have to go Sullivan. I wanted to go Cascade, but, yeah, thanks, Kyle, for the heads up. He shouldn't have said that because then he would have had an advantage on me. But yeah,
it's only fair, I think, to let
you
you know
I
what's up.
I appreciate that. I'm going Sullivan. That's a lot of production to replace, and that's really unfortunate for Cascade.
Absolutely. So the game here on Friday night is going to be Zionsville 4-5 at Noblesville 3-6. Noblesville last weekend they swept cross country, they swept soccer. Now they have the football team up. Kyle or Akeem, let's start with you. Will the football team keep the good mojo running for Noblesville?
I think so. I mean, again, I know with an extra week to prepare, kind of what Noblesville likes to do on offense, maybe you can get that, straightened out and kind of, really kind of focus in on your keys and your reads and kind of stop that rushing attack with Logan Schaffner leading the way and Austin Hastings on defense, kind of their leading tackler. I think they have big games. I'm going Noblesville.
Wow. Kyle?
Austin Hastings, one of those three-sport guys we wrote about Akeem earlier this year. He does it really well, too, for that Noblesville team. And, I figured you'd pick Zionsville. I was going to pick Noblesville, but we both picked Noblesville. I'm going to pick the Millers. We're here at their new stadium here, and I think it's really one of those toss-up type games. I think probably you maybe think Zionsville, based on past history, but also Zionsville's moving up to play 6A this year. They've been 5A in the past, so this is a little bit different for them, but I'll take Noblesville to win.
So the boys different on 4 games.
Wow.
So we could be right back where we started next week. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Akeem, let's start with you. What do you have coming up this week?
Yeah, I've got some college basketball stuff I'm working on. I'll be at the Butler scrimmage on Saturday, Colts Sunday, and some just other college stuff that I'm working on. So
this guy wears all the hats. Like it's insane how many
growing
hats
up. He's
Akeem
off to
wears.
college.
He is. He's doing the segues now. He's covering college. He's got a new group of friends. He's getting better at golf. It's all coming together for him, and I'm just so happy for him. I'm emotional. Kyle,
he's not having it.
No, he's not. It's amazing the show's still in the air. Kyle, what do you have coming up?
I've got a story on CARMEL's Ethan Trent. His brother Tyler Trent, of course. People knew that story. Greg Doyle wrote a lot of awesome columns at the time. He became a national story. Passed away from cancer in 2019, early in 2019. So writing about Ethan, he's a senior at CARMEL now, offensive lineman, going to Indiana State next year. So sat down to talk to him. And also Western Boone's got a cool story. A girls football player who is starting on the line, and she is it's fun to sit down and talk with her. So we'll have a story on that coming later this week too, and then the normal sectional previews and predictions and coverage. I'll be at Brownsburg Ben Davis Friday.
Good stuff.
I forgot. Yeah, and I'll be at New Pal Greenfield Central.
Yes.
All right.
Which we didn't include that game in the picks, but yeah, that should be an interesting game too.
I'm assuming you both pick New Palestine. Stein?
Yeah,
yes.
I think so.
Strine?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, for me, we're going to have soccer and volleyball previews. HSU with a huge win over McCutcheon last week. Webo moves on. Cecina and Lutheran were the other 2 teams that moved in from our area, so it could be a foursome out in Muncie, which I know Akeem is really excited about. I'm a little less so, but it's fun. It was fun covering those matches. A lot of soccer this weekend. Obviously, there's a boys' championship game Friday night. We'll have somebody on coverage on that. I'm going to have coverage of the Noblesville girls versus CARMEL and the BREBEUF boys game. Kyle was going to help us out with the Noblesville boys versus Columbus North. And then we'll also have coverage, obviously, of the Park Tudor girls as they try to finish it off. Gretchen Farley, I just love sharing this fact whenever I can. She's going to run in the state cross-country meet in the morning, then turn around and drive to Indianapolis to compete in the soccer match and try to lead her team to a championship. She's done it through like the last 3 or 4 rounds of the playoffs at least, I'm assuming. Like she did it for regionals, or for sectionals when I covered them. Regionals lined up 2, semi-state lined up 2. She does it and she just keeps flourishing. The kid's unbelievable, so much fun to talk to. A Notre Dame cross-country runner, I talked to her about it and she just loves her team, can't get enough of it, so that's great. High school basketball, but the next time we start, we'll have some high school basketball to talk about on the girls' side. Fat 15, Super Team, all that stuff. Once I get through the fog of everything that's happening right now, we're going to have some features. We've been working on some really cool things with that, some different stuff for kids around the area. So that's exciting. It's all happening at once, Akeem. It's 3 sports, all the sports you're doing, all the colleges, college football, and basketball. And you look razzed. And that's exciting for me. We thank you all, though, so much for watching. Clark is shaking his head telling me to get off the air, so we'll talk to you guys.
Going like this.
Yeah.
Cut.
We'll get back to it next week. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Thank you. Bye.